My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 28 years old, and my brother has been dead and buried for 6 years, which is why it shouldn't have been possible for me to watch him walk up our front porch steps last night like he'd just gotten off a late shift and needed a place to crash. Before I get to that, I need to explain the town, the job, and the rules, because they all tie into why I don't think the thing in my brother's old room right now is actually him. I moved back to Grayridge a year ago after burning out in the city and took a night job at the County Emergency Coordination Center because it sounded boring and safe and paid better than warehouse work if you're willing to give up seeing the sun. The center is a squat concrete box on the hill above town, windowless, with 3 radio masts stabbing up into the sky. Most nights it's me in a black hoodie with a faded logo, dark jeans and steel-toe boots sitting in front of a wall of screens watching alerts roll through. Weather warnings, chemical spills, missing persons notices, all of it flows through a black rack in the corner that hums lower than everything else in the room, labeled with a plaque that says AEG Node 7. The guy who trained me, a tired man in his 40s named Harlan, gave me 3 rules the first night. 1. You don't originate anything from the node. You just relay what comes out of it. 2. You never answer internal traffic tagged dissonant. 3. If you ever see the phrase identity compromise in an alert, you lock this door, stay away from reflective surfaces, and do exactly what the red folder says. The red folder was taped under the console. Most of its pages were blacked out, but the words I could read mentioned entity displacement risk, visual contagion, and Project Lattice host divergence. I made a joke about conspiracy nuts. Harlan didn't smile. You ever wonder why this town has more cameras than people? He asked. It's not about speeders. It's about knowing when something comes back that shouldn't. Grayridge is small, 3 stoplights, 1 gas station, a diner, a church, and a few blocks of houses. My brother Luke was one of the ones who never got out. 6 years ago, he wrapped his truck around a pine out on County Road 12 at 2 in the morning. They said he died on impact. Closed casket. I didn't go view the body, stared at the box, and tried to remember the last thing he'd said to me. I left town a month later and tried not to think about the way our dad sat on the porch every night after that, staring down the road like he expected to see headlights that would never come. When he finally called and said, "I'm getting too old to shovel the snow alone, kid," then I came back. Now it's the 2 of us in the Webb place at the edge of town, 2 bedrooms occupied, one kept exactly like Luke left it. Dad never talked about packing it up. Sometimes he still sets a plate at that end of the table without realizing it, then quietly puts the extra fork away. Night shifts at the center made it easy not to see much of him. I'd leave when he was settling in, and I'd get home when the sky was pale and he was already in his work boots. We talked in passing, like roommates who liked each other but didn't know what to say. Last night stopped being normal around 11:30. I was in the ops room alone. Harlan had gone home sick around 10, watching a line of thunderstorms crawl toward the county on radar. The black rack in the corner hummed, the monitors glowed, and the overhead light flickered the way it always does around that hour. My phone was in my locker, the door was locked, and the speakers were muttering about a rockslide on the state highway. Then every single screen blinked once and reset to a red background with white text and the emergency alert tone, a harsh, descending shriek I'd only heard in test mode, blasted through the room so hard I flinched. The header said Origin, DHS Black, Priority, Localized. Under that the text scrolled, Emergency Alert, Identity Compromise Event Detected in GRAYRIDGE. All residents do not open doors to individuals believed to be deceased. Verify identity of all known contacts. Report anomalies to authorities. Do not acknowledge visual discrepancies. The node spat out a second line almost immediately. Project Ecolatus status, active. Containment in progress. Follow existing protocols. My mouth went dry. I'd never seen anything like it. Weather alerts, sure. Hazmat spills, sure. But nothing that talked about the dead like they were going to be knocking on doors. My first thought was that someone had hacked the system as a sick joke. Then the feeds started coming back. Not all of them, just the local camera network. Traffic at Main and 3rd. The gas station lot. The road out by the cemetery. The node was pulling every lens it had into Greyridge like an eye dilating. In the upper right corner of the main screen, a window showed live telemetry for the town. A new line appeared there. Anomalous entry point, pending. I watched it for a long minute, heart beating loud in my ears, waiting for something to change. Nothing did. The radar kept sweeping, the storms kept inching closer, the cameras showed nothing but wet pavement and empty streets. Eventually, I told myself it was above my pay grade, logged the alert like I was supposed to, and tried to focus on work. I didn't know that at that same moment my dad was sitting in the dark, listening to rain hit the roof and thinking about his son. I didn't know that the porch light flickered once, even though the bulb was new, and that the sensor at the end of our driveway picked up motion, too heavy to be a stray dog, too slow to be a car. I only know what he told me later, that he heard boots on the steps, 3 dull thuds, and that when he opened the door against everything the alert would later tell him not to do. His voice broke in half because Luke was standing there, 6 years late, rain in his hair, smiling too wide and saying, "Hey, Dad, you gonna let me in or what?" Dad told me later that the only reason he didn't drop dead on the spot was because Luke's voice, if it was Luke, hit him so hard it bypassed every rational thought he had, like muscle memory overriding logic, like hearing your name called by someone you loved before your brain can convince you they're not really there anymore. But while he swore the voice was perfect, identical to the last time he heard Luke speak, he also said something was wrong in the timing and the tone, like the pauses were half a beat too deliberate, like someone was playing a recording and trying to match the emotional rhythm, but didn't understand what the feelings actually meant. Meanwhile, I was still up at the emergency center watching the storm drift over Greyridge when the telemetry window on the screen suddenly updated. Anomalous entry point. Residential North Sector. That was our neighborhood. I froze with one hand on the desk, staring at that phrase like it was going to change if I willed it hard enough. The node's status bar pulsed, then spat out another instruction. Internal traffic. Dissonant. Ignore. My skin crawled. The rule echoed in my head. Never answer traffic tagged dissonant. The system hummed like it was thinking. Then a hidden panel under the screens clicked open and a small metal drawer slid out. Inside was a red card with my name printed on it and a line that said, "Verify all contacts before entry." I pulled it out with shaking hands. The idea that this was all some government drill was less and less believable by the second. I checked the cameras manually and my stomach dropped. One of the feeds showed my street, the lamp on the corner washed out by rain, and there, blurred by water streaks on the lens, was a figure standing on our porch. I couldn't make out the face, couldn't see details, only the shape, broad shoulders, familiar stance, head tipped like he was listening for footsteps inside. My chest tightened. It couldn't be him. It had been 6 years. I'd seen the death certificate. I'd seen the wreck. But grief rewrites memory, and distance distorts certainty. And seeing that shape standing exactly where Luke used to stand when he came home late from the mill hit me with a kind of dread that wasn't clean fear. It was the fear of being wrong about reality itself. I grabbed my hoodie and badge, locked down the center the way we're supposed to during high-level alerts, and ran out into the rain toward my truck. The sky was flashing white, thunder rolling through the hills like something massive breathing under the clouds. As I drove, the radio crackled with static so sharp it had a rhythm to it, almost like speech. Every few seconds I thought I heard my name through the static, Marcus, but softer, stretched like it had been pulled through a long hallway. I shut it off. I drove faster. By the time I reached my street, the storm was pounding so hard the gutters overflowed like fountains. I killed the headlights a block away and coasted the truck to a stop, heart pounding. The porch light was still on. The figure was still there. And Dad, was standing in the doorway with his hand gripping the frame like he needed the house to hold him up. I shouted before I could think. "Dad, don't let him inside." The figure turned its head toward me in a single slow pivot, like the motion was new to it, like it was testing the hinges of a body it wasn't used to wearing. The porch light caught its face for the first time. It was Luke's face. Exactly. Down to the scar under his lip from where he'd face planted off a bike at 12. down to the mole on his jawline, down to the exact shade of blue in his eyes. But the smile, God, the smile was wrong. Luke never smiled like that. Too many teeth, too tight at the corners, like someone stretching a mask past its design limit. Dad said my name in a tiny voice I'd never heard him use. Marcus, he's home. No, I said, stepping backward. Dad, that's not him. The thing's eyes flicked between us like it was comparing reactions, learning. Then it stepped off the porch. Not climbed. Not walked, just stepped forward with movement too smooth, too silent, too practiced. Marcus, it said, sounding hurt. Come on, man, it's me. I backed up until I hit the tailgate of my truck. Rain ran down my face cold enough to sting, but my blood felt even colder. You died, I said. I buried you. The thing tilted its head like a confused dog. Luke used to do that. That hurt more than anything. Dad finally snapped out of his trance long enough to shut the door, but the thing didn't react. It took one more step toward me, then stopped as if hitting an invisible line. It blinked, slow, deliberate, almost curious. You should have opened the door, it said. You're supposed to open the door. Inside the house, something banged, maybe Dad stumbling backward. The thing looked toward the sound with interest, not concern, and I realized something horrifying. It didn't need my father. It wasn't here for comfort or closure or any of the things grief tries to trick you into believing. It was confirming location of target hosts. It was mapping familiarity. I dove into my truck, slammed the lock, and peeled out so hard the tires spit water like shrapnel. As I tore down the street, I made the mistake of checking the mirror. The thing was standing in the road, watching me leave, still smiling, rain pouring down its face like it wasn't even aware of being wet. And right before I turned the corner, it lifted one hand in a slow, perfect imitation of the way Luke used to wave goodbye. I drove straight back to the emergency center and barricaded myself inside, shaking so violently I nearly dropped my keys. The screens were waiting for me, and the node had already produced a new alert. Secondary event detected. Multiple instances. Prepare for displacement cascade. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew one thing. Whatever was wearing my brother's face wasn't alone. I didn't sleep at all after seeing the thing wearing my brother's face, standing in the rain smiling like it had just discovered what smiling was, and wanted to show me it had learned the trick. And by the time the storm finally crawled out of Grayridge, the emergency center screens were filling with alerts faster than I could read them. Every feed stacked with warnings that felt less like information, and more like the system trying to whisper panic through text. The node, AEG Node 7, kept pushing red banner notifications, each more frantic than the last. Multiple instances detected across residential grid. Do not engage. Do not acknowledge. Do not allow verbal contact. The phrase verbal contact sat in my stomach like a brick. The thing had talked to me. It had said my name. It knew my name. I pulled up every camera feed in town, Main Street, the church, the school parking lot, the cemetery access road, and in almost every one, somewhere in the frame, there was a figure that didn't quite belong. A man walking with his arms too stiff. A teenager sitting at a bus stop at 3 a.m. staring at the ground as if waiting for something that had never existed. A man in a dark hoodie, my build, my posture, walking down Birch Lane with the same gait I saw in every reflective surface I'd ever passed. There were 3 of them at first, then 6, then 11, all scattered through Grayridge, all wearing faces of people who shouldn't be walking around, people dead for years, people missing, people still alive but at home sleeping. The system labeled them anomalous copies as if giving them a name made them less horrifying. When I zoomed in on the church parking lot feed, my breath stopped, because Luke wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a second version of him. Same face, same clothes, same expression stretched too wide, but this copy was wrong in a different way. Its proportions were slightly off, like whoever, or whatever, had made it lost the reference image halfway through and guessed the rest. The limbs were longer, the shoulders too narrow, the jaw sharper. And both brothers, my brother and the warped imitation, were staring up at the church roof like they were listening to a noise I couldn't hear. Then the warped one turned its head to the exact angle of the camera lens, and the moment its eyes aligned with the feed, the screen glitched once, then cleared. The thing smiled directly into the camera, Not the kind of smile people make. Something else. Something stretching human anatomy to see how far it could go. My stomach twisted. My brother had died 6 years ago. There was no version of him left to copy besides pictures and memories, and whatever scraps of him still existed in the minds of people who loved him. Someone, or something, was reconstructing him from those scraps, and it wasn't limited to him. The longer I watched the feeds, the more I saw the pattern. The things were appearing near houses, on porches, in driveways, but never going inside. They were watching, learning, testing. My phone buzzed in my locker, vibrating so hard it rattled the metal. I opened it expecting Dad, maybe panicked, maybe hurt. Instead, the screen showed a missed call from Luke, my dead brother. The phone buzzed again, a voicemail. I didn't want to hit play. Every instinct told me not to, but curiosity is a disease, and grief is an accelerant. I pressed it. At first there was static, soft and wet, like someone breathing too close to the microphone. Then a voice. "Marcus, hey, I'm cold. Can you pick me up?" My heart slammed so hard I dropped the phone. Luke and I used to say that exact line when we were kids after night football practice. "I'm cold, can you pick me up?" A stupid inside joke. Something no one else would know, something no one else should know. The voicemail continued, but the voice had changed. Not the words, those were the same, but the intonation shifted with each repetition, cycling through versions like it was tuning itself. "I'm cold, can you pick me up?" Softer. "I'm cold, can you pick me up?" Angrier. "I'm cold. Can you pick me up?" Perfect. At the end, the voice whispered something else, so quiet I almost missed it. "You should have opened the door." My legs nearly gave out. The node's alarm chimed again. New advisory, identity breach likely. Project Lattice host divergence at 47%. I didn't know what that meant, but divergence sounded like a word people used when things were going wrong in ways they couldn't fix. Then a new warning replaced everything else on screen. Do not allow physical contact with your copy. I read it 3 times, my copy. I didn't have a copy, I hadn't seen one. Then I checked the Birch Lane feed again and my blood turned to ice. The figure in the hoodie walking under the streetlight, its head tipped in the same angle I did when I cracked my neck, was stopping in front of my house. It lifted its hand and knocked. I grabbed my keys, nearly ripping them out of my pocket. I shouldn't have gone home. Every protocol said don't. Every instinct said don't. But Dad was inside, alone, vulnerable, and the thing wearing me was at his door. My truck fishtailed on wet pavement as I tore down the empty streets. The radio crackled with static again, but this time the rhythm was unmistakable, my voice layered wrong. "Marcus, Marcus, Marcus." I punched the radio off so hard the button cracked. When I reached my street, the streetlight flickered like it recognized me. The other me was still at the door, knocking calmly, even though I could tell from the rigid posture that calm wasn't real, just a rehearsed imitation. Dad was shouting from inside, voice wavering. "Marcus, son, is that you? Why didn't you use your key?" "Don't open it," I yelled as I jumped out of the truck. The copy turned. Its face was my face. Same eyes, same jaw, same scar on my eyebrow, but no human expression. It looked at me with fascination, like a child seeing its reflection for the first time. Then it smiled, my smile but hollow, before whispering in a voice identical to mine, "You're late." And as Dad's hand started turning the lock, I realized something worse than the fact that copies existed. They weren't just wearing our faces. They were replacing us. And tonight was only the beginning. Dad already had the deadbolt halfway turned when I hit the bottom step, and for 1 second I thought I was about to watch my father open the door to something wearing my face. The copy moved first. Its palm hit the wood as the lock clicked, and a sharp prickle shot through the frame into my hands, like the whole doorway had become charged. The knob turned, the door came open 3 inches, and my own voice slid through the gap, smooth and familiar. "Hey, Dad, it's me. You gonna make me stand out here?" I slammed my shoulder into the door hard enough to send pain down my spine, forcing it back into the frame with a crack that rattled the glass. Whatever was outside shoved back, stronger than any man that size should be. The wood bowed. For a heartbeat I saw my own eye through the sliver, same color, same tiny red vein, but behind it there was no focus at all. It felt like looking into a camera, not a person. "Do not let him in," I shouted. "Do not open this door for anything that looks like me." Dad stumbled backward, one hand still half reaching for the knob out of habit. "Marcus," he said, voice paper thin, "there are 2 of you." The thing outside laughed my laugh, slowed down until it sounded wrong. "You're confusing him," it said, using my rhythm. "You know he always believes the first voice." The emergency alert wording I'd seen at the center burned through my head. "Do not open doors to individuals believed to be deceased. Verify identity of all known contacts. Do not acknowledge visual discrepancies." No line covered what to do when your own living copy knocked. I planted my boots, shoved into the resistance. "Dad, go," I said through my teeth. "Kitchen, bat. If anyone calls your name, you do not answer. Not me, not Luke, no one. Understand?" He stared at me like he wanted to argue, then nodded once and backed down the hall, shoulders hunched. The pressure from outside eased a little. The copy's fingers didn't leave the edge. They traced the jam slowly like they were cataloging it. "Grief opens more doors than keys," it murmured almost to itself. "First face, first knock, first voice. Easiest hinges in the world." My mouth felt like sand. "What are you?" It chuckled, and this time my laugh came back layered with others, half a beat off. "You don't want that answer," it said. "Not until you're finished." Finished, like a file, like an experiment. Names from the node logs, Project Lattice, Project Echo, Host Divergence, rose up like bad code. "Why my brother?" I asked. "Why me?" The copy went quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, the fake warmth was gone. "Signal needs anchors. You were tagged. He was good material. Lots of video, lots of talking, lots of replay in people's heads. Easy shape to rebuild, easy way in." Two knuckles tapped the wood in the exact pattern I use when I forget my key. "Town like this is full of anchors. You speak of your dead like they're still in the room, makes us louder." The pressure dropped away completely. "You're going back to the hill now," it said, matter of fact. "You watch, you label, you help choose without admitting it." "Choose what?" I asked. "Hosts," it said. "You'd call it selection." Then its hand slid off the frame. I threw the deadbolt and chain and leaned there, shaking, until I could force myself to look through the peephole. My double walked down the sidewalk with my exact stride just half a beat off, like someone had built me from bad playback. At the corner under the street lamp it stopped. Luke's copy stepped out to join it, rain beating on his stolen face. They turned their heads in sync toward our house, then toward the faint red blink of the masts on the hill. "We're not finished," my double called, voice carrying too far on the wet air. "Not there, not here, you'll see." They turned the corner together and were gone. Dad's hand landed on my shoulder hard enough to make me flinch. "Marcus," he whispered, "what did you bring back with you?" I didn't know if I'd brought anything. Maybe the node had tagged us the night Luke died. Maybe our grief had been feeding it for years. Maybe taking the job just put me close enough to see the readout. None of that mattered now. "I have to go," I said. "Lock this door. Nail boards over the windows if you have to. If anyone knocks, even if it looks like me or Luke or—" I stopped before I said her name. "You stay quiet. If you get an alert, follow it exactly." His face twisted. "She's gone," he said. "Don't drag your mother into this." "They already did," I said, harsher than I meant. "Don't let them wear her in this house." I left before he could answer, because if I stayed I knew I'd break, and breaking was the one thing I absolutely could not do. The road up to the emergency center was just wet black and white lines, and the echo of my own voice in my head saying we're not finished. The last alert from the node had talked about containment, but from what I'd seen on the feeds, containment meant watching and writing names on a list while copies gathered at doors. Maybe that had always been our job. Maybe Harlan knew and never said. My badge hit the reader, the door buzzed open, and the building swallowed me in fluorescent hum. The ops room felt smaller. The black rack in the corner sounded like it was straining, fans whining, lights pulsing amber-red amber in a heartbeat pattern. The main screen had rearranged itself while I was gone. Left, a map of Grayridge peppered with glowing red dots, anchor clusters. Right, an alert log stuttering under the flow. Center, a live feed of my porch, empty for the moment. The log read, anchor points stabilizing, copy fidelity increasing, host divergence NEARING threshold. Then a new line in a heavier font, operator initiate final protocol. The red folder under the console felt like a loaded weapon. I tore it open. Most of it was black ink on black ink. One heading was legible, node compromise response, sever uplink, purge local grid, accept collateral. Sever uplink, cut this node off from whatever larger lattice it was part of. Purge local grid, Wipe every camera, every cache, every coordinate pinning us to their map. Except collateral, everyone in town whose identity was already tangled in that system. In the margin, in cramped handwriting I recognized as Harlan's, someone had added, "If primary identities can't be restored, better to be forgotten than rewritten." My stomach flipped. The node chimed again and threw a prompt full screen. Operator Webb, confirm intent. Yes, no blinked at the bottom. Through the high-slit window I could see the town's lights flickering in slow waves, like something huge was breathing through the grid. On a side monitor, the church cameras showed copies lined neatly at the doors, faces I recognized from old yearbooks and headstones. On another, my porch was no longer empty. Luke's copy stood under the light, staring straight up into the lens, and just inside the frame my own double leaned in close, my mouth on its borrowed face stretched into that wrong almost smile. The speakers crackled. My voice came out, doubled and distorted. "Marcus," it said softly, "we're almost aligned. Don't break the signal now." I stared at the blinking cursor and understood this wasn't just about Grayridge. If we were anchor points on some larger map, the only way to hurt whatever was pulling through us was to cut all the ropes at once and hope we fell into a blank space. If it worked, we'd drop off their grid. If it failed, we'd just die in the dark, forgotten by both sides. My hands shook over enter. "You want selection," I whispered. "Fine, I pick us." I hit yes. The node screamed. The moment I hit yes, every light in the center blew at once, glass cracking outward in sharp pops like gunshots, leaving the room lit only by the pulsing red of the node core, which had begun to thrum so violently the floor vibrated under my boots. The monitors didn't shut off. They shifted, each screen bending through colors and static until all I could see were faces. My face, Luke's face, the faces of half the townspeople spliced, stretched, recombined like the node was trying to hold every identity in its system at once. Behind the faces there were shapes, not copies, not people, something flickering in a geometry that made my stomach twist, something that looked like reflections that didn't belong to anything real. The node released a sound that wasn't mechanical. It sounded alive. Host divergence, 99%, the screen read, purge sequence initializing. The room darkened further, the hum deepening into a low-frequency rumble that made my teeth ache. The node's heat washed over my skin in waves. For a second I thought the whole building might tear open like a shell. A new alert appeared, this one shaking on the screen as if generated by a hand that wasn't human. Anchor severance, engaged. Brace 4, identity loss. My chest seized. Identity loss. I thought I'd prepared myself for the cost. I hadn't even begun to understand it. The feeds showed Grayridge flickering, houses, streets, people blinking in and out like bad film frames. Every time someone flickered out, a copy flickered in, then out again, like the system was trying to decide which version it wanted. Reality wasn't holding still. It was choosing. And then it wasn't choosing at all. It was collapsing. The speakers crackled. My double's voice came through the static, stretched thin like it was being pulled through a narrowing pipe. "Marcus, don't break, stop, stop." Then a second voice overlaid it, Luke's copy speaking in the same slow, deliberate cadence. "We are not done wearing you." A third voice joined them, one I didn't recognize. "Anchor, anchor, anchor." They all warped and blended until it sounded like the entire town was speaking in my ear. Then everything went silent. And in that silence the node let out a low electronic moan. The purge began. I didn't see the wires melt or the capacitors rupture. I saw the monitors go dark one by one, each screen cutting to black like someone flipping a switch between one universe and the next. The map of Grayridge vanished. The red dots marking anchor points evaporated. The cameras blinked out. The hum stopped. And the node went dark. For the first time in the year I'd worked here, AEG Node 7 wasn't making a sound. The emergency center felt suddenly, crushingly still. I waited for the building to collapse or the roof to tear open or the copies to smash through the walls now that I'd taken their eyes, ears, and map away. Nothing happened. Not immediately. A single monitor flickered. One last frame appeared, a grainy, zoomed-out feed of the hilltop showing the emergency center from above, as if seen from a drone or a vantage far too tall for anything human. A figure stood at the edge of the lot, tall, unmoving, a silhouette made of shifting gray static. It had my shape, my posture, and as the monitor died, the silhouette lifted its hand in a slow wave. Then everything went dark. I don't remember leaving the building. I remember the night wind hitting my face and the mud sucking at my boots as I staggered down the hill. I remember seeing the town from above, no streetlights, no porch lights, just darkness. An unnatural total darkness, like Greyridge had been swallowed whole. The streets were empty, the houses silent, even the crickets were gone. I ran home on autopilot. I burst through the front door expecting to see Dad bleeding or gone or replaced by something wearing his face. Instead, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee, eyes wide and hollow. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Marcus," he whispered. "What did you do?" I didn't answer him. I wasn't sure I could. Instead, I moved through the house room by room, checking windows, closets, corners, half expecting to find a copy waiting in every shadow. But I didn't find anything. Not even signs that someone or something had been inside. The house was untouched. But the world outside wasn't. It's been 6 months since that night, 6 months since Greyridge went dark, 6 months since AEG Node 7 died and took the lattice with it. People still live in town, most of them anyway. Some families vanished the same night the node shut down. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty houses, beds still made, food still warm on tables. Those that remained are quieter, more withdrawn. No one talks about the night the lights went out. No one talks about the copies or the voices or the emergency alerts. The town council put out a statement blaming a catastrophic power relay failure. The state bought it. The federal government pretended to buy it. Life goes on, kind of. But Greyridge isn't the same town anymore. It feels thinner. Like the air has less reality in it. Like something in the fabric of the place was holding everything together and I cut it loose. Sometimes I walk Main Street and notice buildings where they shouldn't be. Sometimes I see a neighbor I haven't seen in weeks and their face looks slightly off. Eyes a little too far apart, smile a little too stiff. But if I blink, they're normal again. Dad avoids mirrors now. I don't blame him, because here's the part I haven't told anyone, the part that keeps me awake in the early hours of the morning. A few nights after the purge, I felt something wrong in the house. A pressure, a weight. I walked to the bathroom and switched on the light. The mirror fogged slightly. And for a split second, not long, not lingering, I saw someone standing behind me, but not me, taller, shoulders wrong, head tilted in that same childlike imitation of curiosity my copy once had. By the time I spun around, the room was empty. A week later, I saw Luke's reflection behind me while brushing my teeth. Not his real reflection. The copy's, grinning too wide, gone a heartbeat later. And a month after that, while locking up the house for the night, I heard a familiar voice through the air vent, my own whispering quietly, patiently. "We're not finished wearing you." That's what I did. Cutting the node loose didn't destroy them. It just broke their coordinates, untied their map, severed their anchor points. But things that live in reflections and echoes don't need maps. They follow memory, recognition, thought. They follow you. And lately, in the corner of my eye, I've started noticing a silhouette lingering just a step behind me. Always gone when I turn, always waiting when I don't. I think the purge didn't save us. I think it set them free.